And do you guys struggle at all with, can that one intervention own that whole impact? Because I think that's another thing, that's something that wasn't rhetorical, I'm actually curious, but it's something that we struggle with, and I'm not necessarily, like, in my gut think that should matter as much. Like, I don't think that we're the only reason we get such high graduation rates, but I don't think that it should be. And what I'd rather do is go into schools or into communities with 4 or 5 nonprofits, and we figured a way to plug us all in that web of web of resources. And then if you go in with that network, it doesn't really matter. You all recognize that, you're providing these essential benefits. But I think, when we've been very lucky over the last couple of years, so hopefully it's good and not lucky, but to have these high graduation rates and high college entrance rates. But the question, and I think it's a legitimate question that gets posed to us is, well, are you sort of handpicking these schools that we're in the neighborhoods that have the lowest? Mm-hmm. And so, we mix big schools with charter schools with, we get some diversity that way. Yeah. But those questions will always keep coming. And then it's like, well, shouldn't you have started with the kid in 6th grade instead of freshman year? And those are all very legitimate questions. Yeah. And so I think that's just another interesting element to all this.
No, it really is, and I think you need that diversity, right? I mean, there's all different stages of growing up, and there's, different niches for every organization that take different pieces to build that up. And then there's also just so many kids in need that no one organization in one particular space can do it. I mean, and you're not only talking about even in one area, but then you're also talking geographic dispersion, so there's room for lots of organizations to do this work, and not only room, but it's really quite necessary. So
I think echoing everything you said, we don't certainly, the good news, there's lots of bad news about what we're trying to do. The main one being we don't have any money. We need to get donors to select into individual organizations, but that allows us to cheat. I mean, I think if you run a foundation, there's a great desire to stand up and say, we're absolutely maximizing. We've compared all of our organizations that we've already funded, and we know how they compare to one another, and we've compared them to every other organization out there, and you're drawn to some sort of single social return on investment metric, which is really very challenging. I mean, I think our view is we want to make the case why the organization has an impact, and we want to make the case why we think that impact seems reasonable in cost. And I think we can go a lot of the way there without being pinned down to trying to do this calculation that says 2.7 or 11.7 by saying, look, here's why we think this general program area makes sense. Here's why a 5th column would be helpful. Here's why principal training matters. And that can be expert opinion, it can be common sense. And then, okay, now given that it is a program like this, here's how it benchmarks against others so that donors know what they're getting. Mm-hmm. I think you can make a lot of progress helping people just understand, okay, this is a narrow but expensive program. We're treating a few kids, but we're getting great impact per kid. I don't know, prep for prep or something. And here's one that's broader, because in Appalachia, you're never going to do prep for prep. It's 45 minutes a week. And just see how far you can go down that path before you try to make this master calculation. And certainly the feedback from our donors has been they don't need the master calculation. If it's broadly benchmarked, common sense, but if they think it works, as long as you tell them it works, then that's enough for them.
Yeah. I think there's also, it's not just the money for us, although of course it certainly is the money, and being able to prove your impact brings in a lot more money, but it's also about, so we keep looking for these common measures, and both from other mentoring programs or the youth development programs. We just won about a 2-year fight with the DOE to finally get academic data before and after, and we get some controls and that kind of stuff, and we're really happy about that. But for us, in addition to being able to better tell our story, it's a couple of things. It's making sure that that story is worth telling, but it's about refining your program. Are our 4-year matches better than our 3-year matches? Are we more effective in certain contexts? Not that we would, completely give it, but that we can continue to refine our model and most effectively use our resources. And I think that we found a couple of things very helpful. around that with getting some academic data, but with also just pulling some of the evaluations that other mentoring programs are using and that kind of stuff.
Are you using, one of the things that we've noticed, I think, is increasingly as a middle ground between not doing much formal evaluation and jumping all the way to Rand or Mathematica and spending a fortune, that people are going to people like David Hunter, who used to be with you, or like Mark Elliott, who was at Public-Private Ventures, and others, sort of to say, look, it's not fully randomized, and it's not third party, and it's not gold standard, but help us as if we were doing that kind of thing for a few years, because we'll refine our program and we'll learn something, and then we may need to go out to the outside evaluators and spend $1 zillion, but let's take this sort of middle step, and that seems to be something that is pretty successful. I mean, Gerald Chutavian's doing it now.